I am announcing today that my children will join with thousands of other school kids tomorrow statewide in refusing to take the Cuomo Common Core test.
Well, today, big day. Republican gubernatorial candidate Rob Astorino joining thousands of other parents across the nation, encouraging their own kids to skip the Common Core test. Are the testing standards too tough on both the students and teachers? And some wolves on Wall Street have an apparent need for speed, high-speed trading. It has some investors getting in the game while others watch on the sidelines. Is this fair? Is it legal? And, well, trust me, the FBI is asking both those questions to get in the bottom of this. And ahead of Autism Awareness Day, we are taking a close look at a new CDC report showing autism affecting more kids than it did just 2 years ago. We're speaking with Autism Speaks VP Lisa Gorin. That coming up. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, and thank you so much for joining us this Tuesday evening, April 1st. Now, this week, children in New York and other parts of the country hunkering down at their desks to take the controversial Common Core exam. The academic guidelines set forth as a bipartisan effort to devise new school standards, and it has caused political uproar and protest from parents as well as teachers. Now, Republican gubernatorial hopeful in New York, Rob Astorino, says his kids, they're opting out of the test, and here's his reason why.
Cuomo's Common Core is a disaster in the making. No K-12 teachers were involved in developing its standards, yet our schools are being turned on their heads to force the experimental program to become the new curriculum. Once this happens, New York parents and teachers will lose local control over our children's classrooms, and our schools will effectively become centralized organs of the federal government.
Now, if you say it's just a political stunt, Rob Astorino is hardly alone. Other parents also pulling their kids out of the test. Critics saying teachers and students will have a difficult time adjusting to the new standards. They also say younger students will have to learn more at a quicker pace, making early childhood programs more rigid. And special needs students, they will have to fend for themselves, no equivalency test for them. And on the positive side, the supporters say the standards are internationally benchmarked, meaning the standards compare favorably to academic standards in other countries. Now, states across the country will now be able to compare test scores accurately so they know where they stand. Common Core supporters also say the new standards will enhance teacher collaboration. All right, I want to bring in our panel here tonight, and tonight we are joined by Ronald Ross. He is the superintendent of the Greenburgh Central School District in Westchester County. He has got very strong opinions on this tonight. You can be sure. Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, of course. Richard St. Paul, Republican strategist, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Gentlemen, welcome. Well, Ronald, I'm curious. Did you notice fewer kids today in school than normal?
We had more opt-out this year than last year. One of the things I already noticed this morning, one of the teachers said that in the 4th grade ELA, taking it was the same paragraph and the same questions that they had given to the 6th graders last year, which means either they screwed the 6th graders last year or they are doing it to the 4th graders this year. I've said all along, it's one thing to have standards, it's another thing to make sure they are appropriate for the age level that you're doing. And this is just another example of the implementation being just not off. You know, you can't make minor adjustments in this. This was done at a sort of like the second thing you're going to do, the nano speed. They tried to push this through and they screwed it up. If you're starting with something new, this should have been a 5 to 6 year process. We will put it in various districts and we will try it. And
so you don't mind the premise of a common benchmark that states and obviously schools can measure. Your problem was the implementation.
Absolutely.
Dominic, this one's interesting. This plays in the political world. We just saw Rob Astorino trying to make a point of this. Education's been in the political news, as we know, whether it be universal pre-K, charter schools. Now we're talking about Common Core. We're going to be hearing a lot about this between now and November, aren't we?
No doubt about it. I don't know how much hay Mr. Astorino can develop from this, but he's obviously trying. It just defies logic, Richard. And he's obviously, that is Mr. Astorino, he's trying to connect with those like the superintendent that are expressing outrage over going forward with this process. This is a national outrage occurring throughout the entire country, but I don't know at the end of the day how much political gain he's going to have from it.
He's also trying to play to the folks who are afraid of the federal government or think that the federal government is
doubt about it.
overreaching. You heard him say that this is all to make one centralized education system, put it under the thumb of Washington. I'm curious, Superintendent, if you got any sense of that, that's one of the outcomes, the potential outcomes of this sort of testing.
Oh, I tell people all of the time that, you know, I look at this issue because this is my profession. Where could you ever get the Koch brothers and Bill Gates on the same thing? Because ultimately, they are the two controlling forces of this, and they're both putting their money in. Gates is betting on that they can make billions out of the testing and the books and the publishing, and the Koch brothers are making sure that we destroy public education by destroying local school boards. That's what they have been trying to put in. So they get the charters and vouchers, Gates get this. But what is so important, when I ask people, how much do you know about David Coleman? They go, who is David Coleman? David Coleman is the father of the Common Core. And one of the little things I like to tell people, when he graduated from school, he's a Rhodes Scholar, he went to Oxford, he did the whole bit. Tried to get a job in New York City as a teacher, and he couldn't even get a job as a teacher. But he's the father behind the Common Core.
But Ronald, don't we do this at our peril in that you're close to this, I'm not going to pretend to know a tenth of what you know about the problems and the reality of Common Core and how they teach the test and everything. Well, we didn't have a perfect system before. Remember all the headlines of social promotion and the kids are graduating, they can't even read, and then everyone said time out here. While we might not have No Child Left Behind, we at least had to know what the heck these kids knew and didn't know so we could have some accountability. This isn't perfect, but isn't it born out of a good premise that we had to fix a broken system?
Well, part of that I'll go along with. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. The system was never broken. American public education has never been a failure. When we go back to A Nation at Risk and we look at what has gone on from there, let's start with Common Core. It's an attempt to raise standards to frame a curriculum. But a curriculum, we don't allow the educators to talk about that. A curriculum is always in three parts. First of all, it's the purpose. What are the goals? Why do we have this? Well, you can say it's to make us better workers, it's to make us better educated. The second part is the substance. What is it we're actually teaching? Is it Western European values? Is it the values of society? And the third part is the practice. What is it we're actually doing in the classes? The reason why all of our educational reforms have failed is because we have not allowed educators to be at the table when we actually do this. It's all about kids and student achievement. You want to do that tomorrow, I give you two things that no one is talking about on the right or the left. Number one, fix poverty with the children who come to me. And the second part, more professional development. Our schools are turning out, most of the teaching staff comes from the bottom 25% of college graduates. If you pay them the same as the people who are in the top, why do people go into business? Why do they go into engineering? Because that's where the money is. Turn it around that way, you will get better. But we don't talk about those two things.
You know, I'm curious, Richard. When we always talk, sometimes accountability is one of the common denominators, wherever the subject is. Now, you're a big preacher to say you got to be responsible for your actions. When I saw Rob Astorino say, forget the political posture, I'll keep my kids. I dropped two of my kids off at school today that were taking Common Core. The other one was laughing at him because he wasn't old enough, right? But they're going to take the test. Flawed though the test may be, they're going to take the test. What is the message when a parent says, oh, you know what, to heck with you, I'm keeping everybody back. Teachers are going to pay a price, by the way, on this because they're being judged on that. But beyond that, what is the message that a candidate says that they're going to basically thumb their nose at the system here, not try and fix it, but try and blow it up?
But the message is exactly as we spoke, that the Common Core is broken and it needs to be fixed, and that this is not the proper way.
Is that the way to fix it?
Well, we have to do something, right? They already have our tax dollars, so how else can we going to protest it, right? Which is at the ballot, and also keeping our kids back from taking the test. Look, last year it wasn't Common Core was in effect, and it wasn't an extremely successful test. Only 31% of the kids that took it were proficient. So it wasn't a very good measuring stick. And now, only teachers are going to be held accountable to how well the students do, those that take it, which doesn't make sense either. So Rob Astorino actually is, interesting enough, has an ally with the UFT on this situation, which I think that makes a very interesting
Rob
political mix.
Astorino has his way. He wants to blow up the UFT. Okay, so they may agree on this, but these are bizarre bedfellows.
Absolutely. When I was telling you about Gates and the Koch brothers, if you look at, there are people who have come out who are against this, who are really, what are they on the right? The Tea Party.
Yes.
And they are using the Constitution, anti-federal government shouldn't get in it. And then you have the people. I am amazed at the
consensus of
the
opposition.
What happens
amalgam
if they
of people
fail the
who are
exam?
together. But let's go back to what you asked him early, accountability. Stop trying to, I am not against accountability, but stop trying to use a business model. Once we go down the accountability road, we're trying to turn public education into a business model. That will not work. It has never worked. There is no reform to show that it works. But let's just quickly do the Common Core thing very quickly here, Rich. Ed, why would you take something new if you had a vaccine that was experimental and said everybody has to
break
take
here, but I'm agreeing with you. If you're going to roll something out here,
roll it out
yeah,
with
exactly.
sense.
Progressive,
Don't ask a guy who has 2 years experience and try to make him the commissioner of New York State. You get what you got. His inexperience has screwed up the state.
All right. Now, as you can see, we solved that problem. When we come back here, I'm going to give my friend Andrew a lot of wide breadth on this next one because he had a really interesting analogy about the story that everybody's talking about. New book coming out here from Michael Lewis. And in short, we're talking Fast and Furious. The fairness or lack thereof when it comes to fast-speed trading here. If you even have a 401k, you ought to be livid today. Practice has got some Wall Street investors lining their pockets and others losing out. I don't know how this isn't insider trading, and that, of course, what the feds are getting into. And he's got some interesting analogies. What else we can compare this to as well. Stay with us. We'll get into that after this.